All right. So everybody's connected. I can see everybody's beautiful shining face. And today we're here to talk about, from the lens of the FBI's recent email compromise that happened on Saturday morning, this dispelling this myth, right? I've heard people say, if this can happen to X, or if this can happen to the FBI, if this can happen to Walmart, if this can happen to whoever it may be, right? The question is, why do I even care? And so I'm joined by some pretty awesome people here, and I'll let everybody introduce themselves, starting with our poutine professional, or PP. Here, let's get started.
Love it. Thanks for having me. Ryan Cromar here. While I may not have the acronyms after my name that these fine gents do, I love working with these guys, love talking about the channel and all good things. So yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. Mr. Kirby.
Yeah, I'm Dom. I also work at PAX 8, and I manage Modern Work Cybersecurity and Professional Services. And I, too, love talking channel on the internet for all to hear.
And Mr. Slagle, definitely last but not least, a true professional in our industry.
Jason Slagle, we are co-owner of a small MSP in Toledo, Ohio called CWR. Like doing this stuff. It's fun. This is my favorite type of this thing, right? Like the super non-scripted, like casual. Let's just like get on here and BS about things. Like this is my favorite way to do this.
Yeah, mine too. That's why we do it every week when it's something. Well, you know what? We didn't plan it to be every week, Jason, but like literally there's been something every week worth reporting on since we started doing this. And so it's like kind of turned into a bit of this constant thing. So
yeah, it's not going to stop.
No, it's not.
No.
So what we're here to talk about is I was in the middle of a hotel room lobby, barely recovering from my own adventures the evening before, and I was down to grab some coffee, and Jason grabs me and goes, just as haggard looking, I might add. He says, Matt, have you seen anything about this FBI email? Are you an errand contact? And I said, I am an errand contact. What are you looking at? And he says, well, I got this email, and for this is the last, we'll go techie hopefully, but all of the things matched. Right? SPF match, which is your sender protection framework. DKIM matched, which is your signature essentially with a cryptographic signature, right? And so everything matches. It was coming from a ic.fbi.gov site. So this did give us a belief that this was either legit or they had become compromised. And, Jason, you kind of were the ones that spent your evening playing this game, right?
It was morning, 6:30 in the morning. Yeah, it was. I told the story earlier today on another call. It was a little harrowing. Definitely, this is pretty casual, so I think I can call out the fact that we were drinking. It was the last day of the trade show we were at, and I'm there with a bunch of shady hacker types that I like to hang out with from our space. And my first thought when I read it was like, oh, which of these guys is screwing with me, right? Like they're trying to get me to leave the bar at 12:15 instead of 2, and. I look at it closer and I'm like, we have email filtering in place here. Like how possibly could an email from FBI.gov have gone past our email filter? Like I'm going to have to open a ticket. So I grabbed my laptop. It's 6:30 in the morning because we were getting ready to go to Animal Kingdom. 6:30 in the morning. I'm still hazy. I start reading through the headers of the email and I'm like, okay, SPF DKIM pass, and then like I'm instantly sober, right? Like,
yeah.
hey, there's a problem. So read through it, and I don't know if you've shown or if people have seen the contents of the email. It's not quite bad enough to like fall to the level of like Nigerian print scams, right? But it's definitely not the best English you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, and it's not good tech concepts either. Really, like they're kind of not real things in some of it.
Well, some of them, I mean, yeah, it's like basically they took just enough like real nuggets and hooked it to like CSI or NCIS, right? And like they just weird things. And it's like, well, the threat actor group exists that they're naming. The person exists that they're naming, right? It's one of those things that like, well, this could be credible, right? So what do you do? Like I started the process of declaring an incident internally, right? It's like I let a higher up, or I let my other partner know. I let I let my other people I had with me know that, like, hey, and I let my wife know, right? It's like, hey, I might not be going to Animal Kingdom with you guys today, right? And Matt
Right.
might not be either, and I
Right.
might be looking for a flight home. You might be on your own, right? So,
Yeah.
Faced with this prospect of, I had 3/4 of our leadership team at IT Nation connect with us, and it's like, how am I going to manage this incident from the crappy Wi-Fi we had at the hotel?
I
So
know.
it's
I
like,
was
I'm
using a
gonna have to,
hotspot
I'm
anyway,
gonna have to
just
go
to stay.
home.
Yeah. I want to break
So,
in because Harry Cusick pops in and
yeah.
says, "Is this a battle of the beards?" No, it's no contest. He gets me on fullness and I get him on length. It's like solved at that point. So this
It
is a
is.
draw to the
It's a
death. It
draw.
seems.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm barely in the beard arena, so
I didn't even count you in the top
Yeah, don't
20.
even try.
So.
Pro tip: just stop shaving. It happens on its own.
It does. It just
This
goes, man. It just
this
keeps
is
going.
No Shave November 2020 going on right here, right?
That's about when
Essentially.
it started. That's hilarious. But the thing was, and I think you said it, something I wanted to touch on, and so I want to give this concept that I've been kicking around. There's this question of, and I want to pose it to each of us and have a take on it, right? Just real quick. But there's this question of, well, if it can happen to X, then why do I even care? And my thought process is this, where our job isn't to believe that we're going to stop all compromises. That's not feasible. There's not a single defensive football coach that steps out there and says, I'm not going to allow a single yard. I'd fire him. It's stupid. It's not realistic. And yet we live in this belief that we can stop everything. So I want to start by just saying that we can't stop everything, which means that now we have to start on looking at, well, how would I then defend myself, right? How would I protect against these challenges? And the way I would compare it is by looking at blast radius, right? All we're trying to do in cyber, and I say all, I'm rounding off the edges and being super summative to try to not be super technical, is that we're trying to reduce the blast radius of any particular event. If I throw a hand grenade in battle, I can expect it to have a 5-meter blast radius, right? So somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 feet-ish, give or take, right? So from here to your front door is what I would expect to be the kill zone of that implement. But if I use the nuclear weapon Fat Boy from 1945, I would expect out of that 15 kiloton detonation at a certain level of altitude, I would expect something like 1.9 kilometers of direct impact. But I would additionally expect, and this is a concept I think that draws to cybersecurity as well, I would additionally expect it to have a larger fallout zone beyond that for radiation, burns, devastation of infrastructure, loss due to those type of things. I would have a much larger impact. And the way the city responds, the way the medical professionals respond, the way they act out their incident response plans from a physical incident response perspective determines how many live, determines the quality.
Uh-oh. It's a good freeze, though.
Yeah, it is.
Capping that right now.
That.
He's really just showing you the blast radius is this big.
It's a big blast radius.
Big
Quality of
blast.
life of those. I frozen?
Oh, there he is.
Oh, you were frozen.
Okay.
It was glorious. You were
Okay.
frozen like this.
Yeah. So the blast, I think Dom wins. Thanks, bro. That's awesome. I didn't freeze on my side. Like, I could hear you guys. It was hilarious. But the blast radius of a nuclear weapon is controlled by that response, right? I think in the same way, I think as we look at this event, we should look at what our incident response plans do, how we improve those, and how we control that, right? How the FBI responded, the way they took down the servers, the way they started to examine what their risk was, the way they were very public and transparent about the breach, the way that you start seeing those type of things play out into how that blast radius goes. How many people responded back to that threat actor, started down a chain of getting into an errand response with a fake FBI agent, and what that would have done to our overall internet. We looked at what happened when Facebook's BGP routes went down. Guess what Aaron controls? BGP, right? Aaron controls at the root. I understand I'm being super summative, Jason, but at the root of it, you have these statements of who's allowed to communicate, right? And so you start getting into those type of attacks at the Aaron level, at the very root of the IP space. And so, I think there's some interesting things that could happen if you were to change technical contacts or if you were to gain access to those type of things. And so the point is that the blast radius of this event is always improved. We're trying to reduce it. We're trying to put in protections. We're trying to put on flak gear so that our soldiers have some degree of survivability, even if they're on the outskirts of that direct kill zone from a shrapnel perspective. Like we're doing those things in cyber. And so my point is when people say, why should I do this if they can be compromised? You should look at it as a methodology of how we should start thinking about compromise and how we should start responding to, compromise by having a good incident response plan. And, I'll let whoever wants to go next go or directly say, Matt, you're an idiot. I'm good with that one too. So that's my thoughts on it. is thinking about it from a blast radius reduction perspective.
I think your point about expecting to lose is crucial. I've had people ask me about this field and about what it entails. And the biggest thing I tell people is you can learn the tech, you can learn the operations. We can teach you what TTPs and IOCs are. We can teach you what a SIM is. We can teach you what logging is. Like we can teach you a lot about cybersecurity, but I can't teach you how to accept loss, right? Which can be hard for some people. But you have to go into this role knowing that you are going to lose, right? Like you're not going to win every game you play. And sometimes the stakes are significant. So you need to be ready for that. So then that's a lot of why you can't let things like this discourage you. If we look back to the OPM breach, that was significant, right? That was literally anyone who'd ever applied for security clearance in recent history was affected by that breach, right? And it's not like the OPM just closed shop, right? You have to be ready to accept loss. And I would say the other thing is to avoid blowing this out of proportion, right? It was because the system affected was LEAP, which is Law Enforcement Enterprise Portal, which is a major piece of law enforcement infrastructure in the U.S., but it wasn't a full-blown compromise and all NCIC data was available in the world or anything like that. It was really seems to be some component, right, that sends, according to the FBI statement, there's some component that sends notifications to state and local partners, right? And obviously that's an important piece of infrastructure, but it's not NCIC, right? It's not the whole kit and caboodle. So it was really an isolated incident too, which goes back to limiting blast radius, right? Clearly this infrastructure was somewhat isolated from the far more sensitive infrastructure that controls everyone's criminal past in the country, right? So good on them, because it does appear that there was,
by the way, deletes are 10K. I'm in
made.
on that. I can do a deletion for 10K. I'm just putting. Oh, did I say that out loud? Oh Lord, just kidding.
Oh, the one thing I saw said that the email codes to validate getting it created were essentially in the message, right? So could the threat actor successfully at least create an account? Because it almost sounds like that may be the case.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah, but I think to the point though, the quickness that they did respond. I mean, I felt like the public-private partnership on this was really good in my opinion. I mean, it was Jason, you put your stuff in, and along with probably 15 other very concerned security professionals, right? I mean, I was one of them, right? I kicked in your message to my contacts, but they took it down really quickly.
Pulling the plug, I mean, in something like that, good on them. Like, just pull the plug. Like, we'll figure out. I mean, I understand it's forensics and stuff, and that's sometimes not the best advice to just pull the plugs. But in this case,
at least the network connections, right?
Incident,
right.
When you have an active incident, like, just get it away from the bad people. So pulling network connection is probably better than the plug.
I'll leave this up for a minute, but this is one of the references that Dom's making that was their official statement, still is being updated on their channels. But
it's
I
think
think
be a
that
stupid question, guys. So where my mind goes to this is Jason kind of mentioned earlier what that initial reaction was like when he saw this email come through. As probably the lowest technical person on this call on the totem, my mind goes straight to, isn't this almost akin to like someone calling you up and hitting you with hey, this is the IRS. You need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to need $500 in iTunes gift cards to cover your back taxes.
Yes and no. Here's what I'll say yes and no. Because in that case, we know that phone systems are spoofed. There's not validation techniques in place. And they're catering to somebody that has a little bit of education, right? Mostly your errand contacts are going to be fairly technical to some extent, I would wager. And so you're playing upon these protections that we believe in. I believe in sender protection framework to some extent, right? I believe that if you say, here's the places you should receive mail from, and it validates as being from there, which is what SPF is, and if you now actually step it up and say, here's a published location for my digital signature, Here's the DNS public key, and you're going to see if this matches. And when you receive that, if it matches, you now have a cryptographic protection, and you also have a sender protection framework. So I actually had the IRS send me their copy of their ID first, and sent me a letter first, and sent me things saying they're going to call on this date and the number they're going to come from first. And then I validated it through my attorney, and then I asked the attorney to validate it through the IRS, and they had those records. And so the point is, and I'm being a little hyperbolous, is no, this is much worse than that, because it's actually an authenticated, trusted system that's sending me messages that I now have to trust whether or not the content itself is socially manipulated, which means hire Matt to write it, hire Jason to write it.
Yeah.
And it's a much different outcome as to how quickly
If you
people
make it,
respond to
if you make
Yeah.
it
So
interesting.
just to kind of recap, right? Like this thing showed up with a red wax seal, right?
Yes.
Unbroken, exactly
Yeah.
what you
Correct.
think.
Yeah.
See,
that's
you get
that's
good at
the
dumbifying
perfect-
my words.
Perfect
Thank you.
analogy.
He's
yeah.
so good at this.
I mean, the other side of it is that like I knew enough to like not respond to it, but it's like, how do I go about like the road I was down when I finally, one of our other guys found the news article is how do I independently verify this? Like,
Yep.
who do I call
Yeah.
to find
what I
out?
was
Like,
doing.
do I just call the FBI? Like, where at the FBI do I call? to
1-800
find out if
FBI,
this was-
man.
Yeah,
Give
it's
a call.
like
We should drop in the Reddit thread, because what you said is exactly what someone just posted in here, and that
Yeah.
they called an FBI location and said, hey, this happened to me. And I mean, the poor person on the other side of the phone is going, I'm getting 100 calls like this. What am
Yeah.
I supposed to do?
You
Well,
know
they
what,
replied
though?
to it
Yeah, they did.
to get that number.
Yeah. You know what, though? I want to say this. So here's something that, and I'm going to break my arm, patting myself on the back. But when I was at Iconic, I decided that it would be better for me to have a public-private partnership. And so I reached out to my local FBI office. I started having breakfast and lunch. I started actually giving information in a denatured fashion to them about incidents and data we're collecting, and helped them with their telemetry and TTPs. And I had a great relationship. And guess what I did? Hey, X,
Yeah.
do you mind telling me if this is legit? Yeah, that's our old domain. Yes, that's validated. This looks like a compromise, but the language isn't right. I'm seeing other
Yeah.
reports, right?
I
And so I
mean-
got that information just like that because I had those contacts.
Yeah. But that doesn't really help
Yeah.
me, right? That actually just freaks me out even more.
Yeah. I know.
Also,
But
tell me about this Jason guy.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me about this Jason guy. That's crazy. But no, it really does, help to have those pre-planned how I'm going to engage this. And I think what you said in your post, Jason, was I'm actually going to go modify my incident response plan
Yeah,
because
we're
it
gonna
doesn't
start building those
accommodate for
things.
anything like this.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things about somebody brought it up in one of the other things today. Like, when are you going to be done implementing my security? And the answer to that is never, right? Like, this is stuff's constantly evolving,
Yep.
and so we have to, as blue teamers, right, as people trying to defend against the badness in the world out there, we continuously have to evolve our things too, and so you have to view every incident like this. And one of the reasons I finally decided to post about it, because I'm like, man, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, it's like I got fooled by this thing, but I didn't really, right? And we should all take a step back and learn and go, man, there's a gap here in at least my incident response plan, and probably many. And I didn't call a full incident. I
Data
called the
from
whole
a
team
trusted
in.
source, validation processes.
Yeah,
Right?
Right.
Crap. Yeah, huge gap. I think.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Weeks earlier said, like, absence of evidence doesn't mean evidence of absence, right? It's like, just because I can't find any logs indicating I have a threat actor in the system doesn't mean he's not there. It just means I don't have any logs that show he's not, right? So, if I'm to believe the FBI is actually telling me this, then I probably need to look harder. And yeah.
Well, and what?
Well, I don't want to
systems
weigh in on the
and-
kill
yeah,
chain
go
here,
ahead.
but there's mixed reporting about the kill chain, about its level of sophistication. But the result of the kill chain, right, was a very sophisticated attack. Because to your point, Grimar, it's a red wax seal on an envelope that says some scary stuff, right? And if you don't react to that, then that's equally problematic, right?
Yep.
Like, that is something you absolutely need to react to. And I'm seeing stuff in the Reddit about how the FBI is going to come knock on your door with a sealed report, and probably not. Like, imagine in a scenario where there were really that many compromised networks. There are not that many FBI agents available to go to your, so they're going to get in touch with you in some way. And I think maybe one learning that, I'm not picking on the FBI. I think any agency at any level of government or any major organization like this, maybe a big cyber firm or Microsoft even, should have some way that you get to verify something that they allegedly sent you, right? And that could be another learning from this. A web portal where you go type in a serial number or something.
Yeah,
on an
out
email
of band, more importantly,
right.
right?
It's called
Right.
DKIM.
Yeah.
Well,
no,
you know,
so-
we need another out of
Yeah,
band.
but DKIM doesn't prove, and I think
mean,
this is a great point. DKIM doesn't prove that the person or entity or item
It-
sitting and delivering
does
through those
not.
systems is
Yeah.
that human. And I
It
think
only
that's the
proves the
point
headers.
where my mind goes to like SMIME or
PGP.
physical packs or
Yeah,
PGP, or
PGP.
things that get into that, or out of
Yeah.
band systems. You must be a member of InfraGard, and you must use the DibsNet to check this, and this is how we're going to communicate, and you're only going to get, and you start setting these processes that must be followed. That means that I can't just have one compromise, right? I have to
Right.
have these multiple space compromises, and I think that's, my answer and a million other answers are also right. And I think the point is that what Jason said I love the most is like this game doesn't end. I think the message to a company asking that question, so a regular, genuine SMB about why should I try, is that you shouldn't. You should have professionals that do it, that have a defensible way they do it, that have an architecture they're following, that stay up on these type of events and take it to themselves to go and repair their plans. And then you should understand that it's not just them that protects you, right? You have to actually be a player in the game. Right, you actually have to be a player that understands the risk of your data. How much is my data worth? Where is it? And all these things that we've talked about not being a team sport, ladies and gentlemen out there in the SMB space. This is a team sport. You have to work with the Jason Slagels of the world to develop a plan and say, maybe my people don't need admin rights. Why? Because it's probably the single biggest thing you can do to stop me from gaining more and more access inside your environment and beating your antivirus and beating your backup processes and right like that. Anyways, the point is that a lot of these things are hearts and mind challenges, and my I hate when people try to take it away and say, well, if they can't win, then nobody can. I want to dispel that, right? Like it's a game of losses and wins, and you win more than you lose most of the time.
Yeah, I mean that's
the
part
only
of it,
thing you
like-
can ever do as a blue teamer is make it harder for the threat actor. You will never make it like murder is illegal, like definitively. We've known that for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
People still get murdered, like, and it's not any different. Like we can make it harder. We can make it harder to get away with. We can make it harder to actually do. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like they're going to, and this is just proof of that. Like we keep saying, like if the FBI is going to get compromised, which they are, this is not the last time the FBI is going to get compromised,
Or the
by
first
someone.
time.
Or the first time. Or the first
or three-letter for that matter, right?
Yeah.
Any
So,
three letters.
You guys mentioned something that is interesting. You talked about being able to ask the vendor, "Hey, how legit is this?" Right? In Matt's case, it's a friend of a friend or someone on the inside. The average layman, like when I'm looking at this, my initial thought is, I'm going to take this email, I'm going to drop it into something like MX Toolbox, check headers. If it looks gravy, I'm going to move on with my day.
Past.
Right? Like
Yeah.
that's me not knowing what else would I be doing? And if you don't have somebody on the inside and that vendor's not providing that information, then what really are those steps you would take? Like how the heck would you even know?
Yeah, when MX Toolbox told you it was legit, then what was your plan?
Yeah. You're like, this came from them.
Because that's
I
what
think
happened.
The linguistic
Right.
stumbling is probably the only saving grace in
Yeah.
this incident, right? I
Yeah,
saw somebody report this as a
100%.
near miss.
Yeah,
Right?
100%.
It's fair.
And-
It's like the Kaseya thing. Like if they had taken like another 20 minutes to get it right, it would have been like a lot worse than it was.
Yeah. I obviously refrained from most of those pokes, but true story on the data set. But I would say though is that is kind of this point that we should take is this is the near miss that you should learn from. This isn't the cataclysmic event. This is something that you should, the military does a pretty decent job at after action reports, right? Let's delve into what this failure was. Let's delve into what the next structure would be that would fix this. And, I think if we looked at this, it should bring up exactly your point, Jason, of like, do we have methods to actually receive those messages? Right? Yeah. Because if I had somebody write that wasn't just trying to poke Vidi Tom blah blah blah, I can't remember his name, but he's a security researcher. He actually isn't a threat actor, but they were trying to punch him. Maybe he has a little gray hat. Yeah, maybe he has a little gray hat.
I understand.
But they were trying to blame the guy, right? In that point, and if they didn't do that, but rather said, please coordinate with us immediately. Here's our out of band hotline for this that we just stood up. You're going to be working with Agent Barsky the third, right? And you start doing that, like how well, of course the third. Like his dad was a long-standing citizen in the United States after leaving Russia. I've even made up the backstory for Agent Barsky.
We can take it even farther, right? So what if you knew IT Nation Connect was going on and you targeted
Sure.
MSPs instead of Aaron contacts and you made it look
Oh,
legit? Like how many
boom.
MSPs would have just knocked down their entire tool chain, right?
Yeah.
While they tried to figure
Yeah.
out what was going on, right? So now you've caused
Oh.
at least a denial of service attack, if not chaos, while everyone's
And-
trying to figure out if the latest like incident happened.
And what if at the same time I now, as the threat actor, stood up the phone number to call us on because we've hired extra help as an MSP for all of those clients, right?
Yep.
Like they can't get through on the main number. Nobody's you know what?
Yeah.
But this other number's answering. Oh, hey, this is CNWR. Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem. We're working with you. We're gonna need this new agent installed. We've taken down the old infrastructure. I'm gonna boom. Right.
Yeah.
And you could, I mean, really, you could actually, there's so many ways these people are going to get
And that's
better.
the beauty. Like a lot of
Yeah.
threat actors are not smart.
Right.
Because they
Or at
didn't
least
think
aren't
of
able,
it.
to, aren't able to jump the cultural divide, I think is a
Yeah.
lot of the challenge.
Well, that's
too,
true.
But yeah.
That too.
yeah.
That too.
Yeah, both.
But like
yeah,
imagine
both
if it was a nation state actor. Like I'd
Oh.
get in there and I'd be real
Yeah.
discreet and I'd be real targeted in what I use that domain for. So part of this is luck that it was just
they burned it.
apparently someone poking fun, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what it
Yep.
seems to be. At
They
this
did
rate,
burn
but-
it. Actual accuracy,
Yeah.
there, Jason. Like
Yeah.
that was not one that could have been the much larger blast radius discussion. So,
Right.
Oh, we got us a giant one from. And I want to touch on some of the
wall.
comments, right? Because I love when people do this. But Harry Cusick popped in with, this is why we do things like this, because it helps us and allows us to check our security stack and education. We love following you guys and keeping my company on point. Like, I think that's the call to action, right? Like, I'm not special. Jason's not special. Dom's not special. We're just forcing people to think about these things. Dom wins the beard battle. What are we playing golf here? Is this a race to zero? Like you just happen to have some stubble? I don't think so.
That's just a fellow Dom.
It's been a
who's
few
involved
hours.
with the
Yeah.
Nokia Club.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I push all the transparency I push is because I want the
Me too.
ability to learn from the mistakes everyone in the industry makes, right? It's like when people tell me that they haven't been compromised, I think they're lying, right? Like I've got
No
got
doubt.
machines here at my house that have been compromised. I've had machines
Yeah.
at the office from time to time get compromised, right? It's like I run FreeBSD at home now because like no one bothers with that anymore because there's only like six of us left. But but I mean I've definitely had stuff owned. It happens, right? And you learn your lessons, you harden even harder, right? Like and you move on with life. It happens.
Yeah. Well, first off, I feel like Slagle, you're ruining my ego. Like I only had a very tiny one anyway. I already have eyes that point in different directions. But like Slagle is special. I didn't mean to deride the great Slagle. It is a true story. I do love this guy. So Kyle's got your back on that one. And then same thing with Tim Golden. So fair enough. Touche. I apologize.
Apparently
He
I'm
is
dragging a
special.
fan club here along with
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
don't
No, I
understand
love
where
it.
this is coming
It's
from.
awesome, dude. Well, you do good things. It comes back, right? I think is the point. And then Dominicus Wells, other Dom, mini Dom. As an SMB, you wouldn't want a finger to point at you when you get hacked, right? And I think that's true. I know it may sound facetious, but even, I feel that if they had investors or looking to sell the biz eventually, a verifiable security posture with historical increase would, and I would imagine he's going to say increase its price, right? And so I think that is true. And I think that starting to have documentable, verifiable, and defensible security records and documentation of the things that you've improved and the changes you've made and the iterations you've increased, like that's how you win that, reasonable person rule, right? That's how you win those, pending lawsuits around privacy and HIPAA and, all kinds of things that are coming that will, like Dom and I are doing a special with our attorney on Friday on. So,
but
Well, this is
at the
one of those
same time-
scenarios like, because imagine, Jason, if you had actioned this email in the wrong way, but you did verify DKIM, you verified SPF, and you thought, man, this really looks like it came from the FBI. You've taken all the steps you said you were going to take, right? You found a new threat, and a little bit of luck and extra paying attention was on your side, despite the hangover, that you were going to spot these grammatical errors, which again was the only IOC here. How many people didn't spot that, right? So the idea that we're all sharing it publicly, we're talking very loudly about it, helps everyone else. But I really like that you went as far as to say, now we're going to revisit our incident response and our incident handling plan to figure out when this happens.
I cried a
again. 'Cause
little.
Next, it's going to be the state police or whatever, the NSA, like who knows? But somebody else is going to get breached. And we're going to have the same exact scenario, probably by a more sophisticated threat actor who now realizes, oh, this is a great channel, right? Like, I'm going to go attack govdelivery.com and see if I can start, enumerating newsletter services that the government uses. It's a very, very smart attack.
Slagle,
Wrong
you
threat
were about to
actor.
say
Smart
something
attack.
as well. Jason, you were about to say something.
Man, I can't remember.
It
That was
happens.
like 3 minutes ago.
I was going to
but,
ask Slagle something.
Yep.
After all this, did you get to go to Animal Kingdom?
We did. We were about an hour late.
Yeah.
It ended up. It ended up being fine. It's a long. So lessons that come out of this that are not technical at all is that scheduling like Disney anything the day after being at IT Nations, like from Wednesday
You should
till
have led with
Friday,
an early day.
is
Yeah.
probably not a good idea, and we probably won't do it again.
That's so smart, dude.
That's rookie moves, man. Rookie
important.
moves.
I mean, I was dying there the whole day. It's like, you walk. I don't know. Is there a place where you can buy like uncomfortable floors that conference centers buy from? I just don't understand it. Like, can I give you like an extra $100 for the event? You put padding down, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Standing for
It's like
36
commercial
hours or
grade
so.
carpet.
Yeah. I will say, to touch on that, and a little bit tangential, but to touch on the conference this year, like IT Nation was just such a great buzz that we hadn't seen. I haven't seen in any of the other events I've been to. I mean, I've been to a bunch, and I don't know, it just felt so alive. And I was
very
actually
alive.
in so many conversations, and I think I would have anticipated going to Animal Kingdom going, I'm going to be pretty well rested. I'm going to go to bed by 11:30 like I have been with these other events. And then it turns into, how am I walking into the third hotel room I'm going to get kicked out of tonight, right? At 2:30 a.m. Like, I don't know how I went to bed at 4 a.m. one night. And it's just, and pack better shoes. Pack better shoes, bro. I like the shoes I wear.
Kyle
damn it.
Jackson's shoe game was on point. So
Was it, though? Like, I didn't
Showed up
notice.
in yellow Crocs one night.
Oh,
I was just
so he
gonna
probably
say,
brought
I
like
bet you
9
Kyle
pairs of
showed up in
shoes.
Crocs. Crocs are the way
That's
to go.
awesome. Anyways, well, I think we've beat this horse to death. Any parting points from Cromar or Kirby? Let's go ahead and just wrap this up.
Unrelated to this, Halo Infinite came out today, multiplayer. Hopefully that wasn't a fake, because I'm downloading it as we speak.
I actually
Awesome.
released it.
That's fantastic. All right, well,
I just
eat your
dropped in the
poutine.
chat for folks, if you do want to figure out how to can actually get in touch with the FBI, they list all their field offices on the website.
That wouldn't have done any good. Those people at the field offices don't know anything, right? So they would have told you, like, well, if it says it came from us, it's probably legit. And that's exactly what,
Yeah. I think, though,
3 months out
at
of
least
Quantico.
but I think, though, from at least from a contextual perspective, you would say validate first that they don't have some internal knowledge of this compromise.
Yeah.
Next,
Right.
move on to this methodology for confirmation or next step decision making. And I think whatever those answers are, thinking about them and tabletopping them, as someone said earlier, right? I think it was Timothy Golden said, right? Like, that is the answer here, is talking about what should I do? And even if it's the wrong answer, it has been thought about ahead of time and is much more likely to be right than the answer made when panicked at 6 a.m. after the set preconditions that we just discussed, right? And I think that's the takeaway for me, anyways. That, and that I do need to have foldable shoes to go in my Go box. So, yeah, I can get 2 pair in there, but that's it, bro. All right, Kirby?
That's it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, Jason, for joining us. Like, I asked you just this morning, and I'm glad you're able to pop in.
Glad to do it.
I want to make this a platform to invite lots of my friends and professionals that do this to just have a chat and bring some perspective. And, raising tides rise all ships, right? That's kind of my shtick. So, love it. Appreciate you so much.
Cool. See you later.
Thanks, Jen.